Boker Tov Nitzana.
Boker Tov.
How are you?
Oh, I'm great.
We are here at Kop O Joe, my podcast, with my guest, Nitzana Darshan Leitner, who is the chairwoman of Shurat HaDin. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about Shurat HaDin?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here. Shurat HaDin is a civil rights organization that takes Israel's enemies to court. It fights terror financing. We bring lawsuits on behalf of terror victims against all kinds of terror entities and their financial patrons, banks, social media, companies, states that sponsor terrorism. We fight BDS, those who want to delegitimize the state of Israel. We fight war crime allegations in the International Criminal Court. We fight incitement to terrorism and anti-Semitism on the social media and the campuses. And we're fighting on behalf of Israel in the legal arena.
And what's the most interesting thing that you're involved in right now? The most interesting matter?
Unfortunately, in the wake of October 7th, we were drafted by the security services, which we work with along the years, to join the war and to help the IDF win Hamas. So right now, we are involved with mega lawsuits against Hamas, against the Palestinian Authority, of hundreds of victims from the massacre and soldiers that got killed on October 7th. We are involved with litigation against the Red Cross that refused to fulfill their obligation according to the international law and visit the hostages in the Hamas captivity and provide them with the medicine. We are involved with a lawsuit against UNRWA that participated in the murder and helped Hamas to fight Israel. We are involved with a lawsuit against Harvard University and against Students for Justice in Palestine for anti-Semitism in the campuses. We are involved in proceeding in the International Criminal Court. We're working 24 hours a day.
Okay, let's focus just for a minute on Students for Justice in Palestine, because I found that to be very interesting. What exactly is the legal process there? How do you expect to hurt them, to get damages from people who were hurt by them? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah,
that
in
process.
the United States, there is a law called the Anti-Terrorism Act. It allows American citizens that were killed or injured in terror attacks abroad to bring a lawsuit against a terror organization in the United States or against someone who's aiding and abetting terrorism, a designated terror organization. We allege that Students for Justice in Palestine is an organization that provides services to Hamas, that actually in his protests and his demonstrations and his activity in the campuses provides services to Hamas, is aiding and abetting Hamas. We come and prove that the Students for Justice in Palestine is actually an alter ego of a very known designated organization called the Holy Land Foundation. Holy Land Foundation was created many, many years ago by the Muslim Brotherhood. It helped Hamas in the United States. And he worked so bluntly and openly that eventually was indicted by the Attorney General of the United States and deemed to close. The heads of the Holy Land Foundation simply opened a new organization called American Muslims for Palestine. It's the same people, it's the same organization, the same structure, the same activity, just under a different name. And this organization builds up a studential arm called Students for Justice in Palestine. So here we come and say that actually by echoing the ideology of Hamas in the campuses and spreading their propaganda and shifting the public opinion of the students and everyone else in the United States toward Hamas, Students for Justice in Palestine actually provide vital services to Hamas in the United States, and thus is responsible for the damages that occurred to the victims of Hamas on October 7th.
Right. So this is something I think people have a hard time understand. They see the news and they see the horrible, violent demonstrations that are going on many of the campuses. and they ask themselves, where are all these people coming from? Are these students? We see that they have money. Who's providing the money? And basically what you're saying, and I saw you on one show where you said Students for Justice of Palestine is not supported by Hamas; they are Hamas.
Right.
So
exactly.
How does that work? They're just spreading propaganda. They're trying to sway the opinion of students on campus. Is there anything more direct? Are there payments being made to demonstrators and things like that?
Right. So as far as we know, so far we didn't find evidence that show that Students for Justice in Palestine gives money or weapon or any support of this sort to Hamas. However, the material support in the Anti-Terrorism Act can be defined as speech, as an advice, as type of services that are not so much materialistic. I'll give you an example. There was a case in the United States Supreme Court called Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project. It was like a bunch of professors from Harvard universities that agreed to help the Tamil Tigers to get out of the watches of the State Department and just help them and advise them how to speak to Congress, how to speak to the decision makers, how to present themselves better in different hearings that they had in order to get out as a designated terrorist. And Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, put them on trial because they supported a terror organization. They provided services to a designated organization, the Tamil Tigers. And this professor came and said, we didn't do anything bad. We just gave an advice. Advice is protected by freedom of speech. And besides, we didn't charge any money. We gave it for free. And Holder said, and this is what the court eventually approved, that giving material support of any kind of sort and to the designated organization is prohibited. And even if it's speech, it's not protected by freedom of speech when you give it to a designated organization. And even if you gave it for free, you actually freed other money to the terror organization to divert and to use for its violent military actions. And therefore, if we apply the same rule on Students for Justice in Palestine, we'll just conclude that this organization is serving as the student arm of Hamas. Today, every terror organization needs a lot of arms. They need a military wing, but they also need a benevolent wing, and they need a social wing, and they need a PR wing. Hamas would not exist, any organization, Daesh, ISIS, for instance, would not have existed without his beheading videos. How did he spread his propaganda? How did he spread his ideology? Just by taking films, taking videos, and spreading it all over. And this is what Students for Justice in Palestine is doing for Hamas, just providing them with PR services to an extent that they really became part of Hamas. And as such, they are responsible for what happened in October 7th. Mm-hmm. They have the same goal. When they call from the river to the sea, they know exactly where the river is and where the sea is. They know they want genocide against Israelis.
The students don't
Jews.
necessarily know. You're saying the people that are giving them those lines, because we're under the impression that these students really are, even though they go to Harvard, they're uneducated. They don't really understand where the river is, where the sea is, and they don't even know what they're saying.
Well, it's you can't just live with ignorance. Either you know or you don't know.
So they know exactly what they're saying.
If you get drafted to a demonstration that is calling from the river to the sea, and among other speeches you hear "gas the Jews" or "genocide to the Jews," you can understand you are a Harvard student, right? You got accepted because you have some type of IQ. Mm-hmm. That these speeches are wrong to be said. It can't be protected by freedom of speech, with all due respect. I know that the religion of the United States is freedom of speech in all kind, in all sorts. But be responsible for what you say. Be responsible for what you do. I don't blame the tendency in the United States that is supported by the progressive movement that alien and bring up the rights of the minority over the rights of the majority. So every minority can get up and feel elevated from all people and abuse its elevation. The Black Lives Matters gets up and create vandalism all over the United States because they are a minority, and the progressive movement accepts it. And the law enforcement accept it and don't take any steps against it. See what happened, and then you have other type of minorities. You have the LGBTs, which are not violent, but they have the right to come and express itself. But you have other violent groups, like Muslims groups, like pro-Hamas groups, like pro-Palestinians groups, that using their status as a minority to go and create vandalism and to threaten and to intimidate other people on the streets and in the campuses, and make the life of the Jews in the campuses and elsewhere outside unbearable. And this is wrong. This is not okay. And this is something that has to be fought. And Shurat HaDin is fighting against it.
I have to say that the way we first met was actually Nitzana and I worked together. She hired me to prepare and examine a witness in federal court. The witness actually, Aryeh Spitzin, testified about how Hamas uses all kinds of information from the internet, including religious information, to recruit terrorists on the ground. At that time, they were terrorists that were that committed suicide bombings, and we showed how that Hamas was responsible for recruiting those people.
Right.
Now, I'm assuming that's what's going on here, that there's all kinds of information on the internet, recruiting students to get involved in these demonstrations and to get involved in violence in other places. And the same way we were able to sue the Syrian government and the Iranian government in the Taylor Force matter, which we did then, that's exactly the same kind of ways that they're using now to get recruits.
Exactly. But add to this the Qatari funds that is flooding the universities and the campuses in the United States and teaching the students actually to hate Jews, teaching the students the Palestinian narrative, forcing them actually to adapt the side of the Palestinians on the side of the Jews. And now you have students that were taught that Israel should be condemned, that Israel should be boycotted, that Israel should actually be replaced by a Palestinian state because they adopt the Palestinian narrative that they were here before, and Israel came and stole the country, stole the land, etc., etc. And these students don't know better, don't know different views, and so this is what the campuses allowed the students to become, with the support of Students for Justice in Palestine. And you're absolutely right that Hamas is recruiting these students or other militants or other terrorists in all different ways, including the social media, including videos, because and including boots on the grounds. Hamas is locked in Gaza. This is where Hamas is. Hamas is a wing of the Muslim Brotherhoods from Egypt, and it's located in Israel. It's located in Gaza. It's located in the West Bank, the Judea and Samaria area. This is where the Hamas physically are. We have some representative of Hamas in Turkey, in Lebanon, in Qatar, but these are more politicians of Hamas. The terrorists of Hamas are in Israel. So how, and they are not allowed to come and go. They don't have visas. They don't have permit to leave this area. They are hiding in Gaza in tunnels and in Judea and Samaria in shelters. So how these people can go and train other people how to kill? How can they go and draft other terrorists to join them? Only by social media and only with other branches on the ground, boots on the ground. So the students in the universities, which are pro-Hamas, are actually those who represent the Hamas agenda that recruit other students to join them.
And in terms of remedies, what kind of remedies are you? First of all, who are the suits against? Are you suing any of the universities?
No. In this lawsuit, we are suing only Students for Justice in Palestine with a list of 200 students that are the main leaders of the organization in the campuses around the United States.
Are you suing them just to get them to cease and desist, or are you asking for money from them? Do they have money?
Money talks. Money. I don't care. I don't care. If I have a judgment against these individuals, I will make their life miserable. First of all, the idea of litigating a lawsuit in the federal court in the United States, you need to hire a lawyer. You need to litigate the case. You need to defend yourself. It's very, very costly. And it's also a very heavy burden on your mind because this is a mega lawsuit. This lawsuit was filed on behalf of close to 100 victims seeking more than $1 billion compensation. That's not a joke. Mm-hmm. And if we win the judgment, we will pursue these people until their end. We will do anything we can in order to collect the judgment. And Shurat HaDin is known by their persistence. We don't stop when you get a judgment, even if we get it against those who did not litigate the case, like Iran, like Syria, North Korea. We take the judgment and put liens on their assets. We were able to enforce our judgment and collect against bank accounts that belong to the Iranian regime or buildings that belong to the Iranian government. Just now we are selling a building in New York called 655th Avenue, owned partially by the Iranian. Yeah, right. It's owned partially by the Iranian government. It's worth $700 million. Mm-hmm. It's being sold and the process will go to the terror victims. Every deal that Iran is making, like for instance, they signed a deal with Boeing to sell them 80 aircrafts for $17 billion. We went to the court in Chicago where Boeing has its headquarters, and we filed a motion for a lien on the deal. We said we have a judgment against Iran. We are entitled to the Iranian money that will go in this deal or to the aircrafts. And indeed, we are able to collect hundreds of millions of dollars from the Iranian regime on behalf of the victims. And we did that with the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority litigates these cases, but when they lose, they don't come and pay. So we go and enforce it against assets that belong to the Palestinian Authority. A major asset that they have is the tax money that Israel holds for them, collects for them, and gives it to them in the end of each month. You're talking about $3 billion. So you can take your judgment and collect it against this money.
So you're actually filling the space that was left when the Biden administration abandoned the sanctions against Iran. There's no more government sanctions or less government sanctions, but there's the power of the legal power, the power of the court, the power of getting a judgment, the power of leaning up assets, of sometimes collecting on those assets, taking buildings, taking bank accounts, and you're filling in that area where maybe the public sector dropped the ball.
Yes, you'll see that Iran is not dealing in dollars anymore, although the sanctions were pulled up for the reason that if they just step their foot in the United States in terms of a deal, assets, bank accounts, we are going to seize it. And also elsewhere in Europe, they will not deal with a dollar currency. And even in countries that are they have relationship with, they will be very, very careful not to act openly as the Iranian government. If you have their boats, for instance, they're under a different flag. They will never be under the Iranian flag because they know that there are terror victims holding judgments for billions of dollars that can enforce this judgment against these boats. As a matter of fact, we had a case in Gibraltar when an Iranian tanker were caught over there. That was before the sanctions were lifted. And we took our judgment and enforced it in Gibraltar against the Iranian tanker. Mm-hmm. So now they're smart. Their oil companies will never be under Iranian registration. It will be different companies, different names, different countries, just to hide their identity because we can enforce our judgment against them.
Now, you mentioned the Palestinian Authority, that you're also pursuing the Palestinian Authority. We're hearing now from some people in the news or people trying to sway public policy that we need to bring in some kind of entity that's affiliated with the Palestinian Authority to possibly take over the administration of Gaza. Our the relationship of Israel and the United States with the Palestinian Authority has been, kind of like warm in different periods of time, cool and warm, hot and cold. From your perspective, is the Palestinian Authority a legitimate entity to negotiate with, to bring in as any kind of administrator of any future Gaza?
In no way. Absolutely not.
Well, because I know you actually started your career at the beginning of your career. One of the matters that you were involved in was preventing Abu Mazen, was it, from coming to Israel?
That was Abu Abbas, a different Abu Abbas. Mm-hmm. That was the mastermind behind the Akil El-Aro. And he was the head of the PLO cell that hijacked these boats and killed Leon Klinghoffer from New York. And
he was in a wheelchair.
He was in a wheelchair, right? And when he wanted to come to Israel to be a signatory to the Oslo Accords as a member of the Palestine National Council, we went and filed a high court petition to block him from entering Israel for his role in the death of Leon Klinghoffer and other terror attacks that he committed. So from day one, we were fighting the Palestinians. And when the Second Intifada occurred in 2000, we were the first one to file lawsuits against the Palestinian Authority. The first case was on behalf of the soldiers that were lynched in the Palestinian police station in Ramallah by Palestinian policemen in the Palestinian Authority. And indeed, over the years, we represented a lot of lawsuits against the Palestinian Authority, which we ultimately won. The courts decided that the Palestinian Authority is responsible for all the terror attacks during the Intifada because he found the Palestinian Authority to be supporting the terrorists, providing with weapons, with money, with shelter, with safe haven, simply being part of the terror attack itself and therefore responsible and owed compensation to the terror victims. So I know the Palestinian Authority for years, from the day of its inception. Yasser Arafat was directing the Intifada. He was behind all the terror attacks. He was calling his employees Palestinian policemen, Palestinian security guards, Palestinian security officers, all their forces to go and carry out attacks against Israelis, against Jews. This is how I won a $655 million jury trial verdict against the Palestinian Authority, because they saw that the Intifada is not a grassroots operation. It's a directed and intentional, massive terror attacks against Israel. So now, the United States want to bring this terror entity to rule in Gaza, to replace Hamas in Gaza. And it's really, really the most absurd thing that we heard, because first of all, you don't replace a terror organization by a different terror organization. They both the same. Hamas is equal to Fatah that controls the Palestinian Authority. Fatah is a designated terror organization. Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, is the head of Fatah by definition, by role. They are the same hostile organization that wants to destroy the state of Israel. And the only reason the Palestinian Authority did not do an October 7 attack on Israel is because the IDF somehow controls the Palestinian Authority. The IDF was out of Gaza, and this is why Hamas were able to carry out this massacre. But the PLO and the Palestinian Authority have exactly the same goal, and they would have done the same thing if they had the opportunity. Second, Hamas doesn't, the Gazans, the residents in Gaza, don't like the Palestinian Authority. If you run an election now and you ran polls in Gaza, you'll see that 80% of the people in Gaza support Hamas. And 80% in the people in the Palestinian Authority support Hamas. And they all admire Hamas for what it did on October 7, and they're all happy with the results. So if the Palestinian Authority even thinking of controlling the residents of Hamas, they will be killed. They will be killed by Hamas, who will not let them take over the same way he didn't let them take over after he won the elections in Gaza in 2006. There were elections, the Hamas won, and they threw out the PLO representatives from Gaza. They actually threw them from the top of the roofs. So if the PA dares to go back to Gaza, they will face the same fate. They will just be killed in Gaza. And the third reason is that we, after October 7th, want to start a new page in Gaza. We want to try, I'm not sure we'll succeed, but we want to try to do denazifization to the Gaza people, to try to re-educate them, not to be lovers of Israel, but at least not to be haters of Israel, to somehow live side by side with Israel. And you cannot do it when the one who rules the Gaza people is the Palestinian Authority that teaches to hate Israelis, that teaches to kill Israelis, that incite to kill Jews in their all media platforms, on their social media, in their mosques, in their ministries, in their schools. If we want to try to re-educate the people in Gaza, we have to put somebody different, totally different. It can be the PA, it can be UNRWA, that we saw that during the massacre, its employees went and murdered and burned people and raped women and kidnapped hostages. And during the war, they allowed Hamas to hide missiles and launchers and to shoot from their facilities and to dig underground tunnels in their hospitals and kindergarten and schools, that UNRWA is actually Hamas. We need a clean entity that will rule.
No,
Hamas.
Is there such an entity that exists anywhere? I mean, we have to talk about, this is a conversation that needs to be brought up. the topic of Islam, the topic of the attitude of Islam towards Judaism, towards Israel as an entity, as the Jewish homeland. Are we just ignoring the fact that there's this religion out there that is teaching certain things that we just can't live with in the same area?
We are not really ignoring it. We know who we're dealing with, but we kind of don't have a choice because these are our neighbors, and there is no way to deport them according to international law. By the way, there is a way to encourage them willingly to live. And I think Israel should start, even today, talking with countries to host refugees that will just simply leave Gaza, not by force, but by providing them with perhaps a package to go and encourage them to leave. Most of the people in Gaza don't want to stay under this militant, horrible rule of Hamas. But set aside this, the people in Israel realized long ago that the people in Gaza and people in Judea and Samaria hate them and want to kill them, and actually have been under constant terror attacks since the Oslo Accords. Massive terror attacks. During Oslo, there were 1,500 people killed, and in October 7, 1,200 people killed. They want us out. They want to kill us. So we know that these are the worst enemy ever, but we have to live next to them. So the only way we can survive next to these hostile people is by trying to teach them that there is no choice, that they have to accept Israel as a fact, and to try to re-educate them, to tell them that it's possible to live near the state of Israel. And I'm saying it because I see other nations in the Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, people that are not coming and their all goal in life is to kill Israelis, is to destroy the Jewish state. They signed the peace agreement with us. Okay, fine. Maybe they're not doing it from the love of Israel, but they're living peacefully next to us, with us. I say it because I see what happened to the Arab Israelis in Israel. In 1948, they wanted to kill us. Today, the Arab Israelis, I'm not saying they sincerely love Jews, but they learn to live next to us. And the key is really to bring, when I'm saying a clean entity, is not only education, is also economically, also creatively, an entity that will really be able to build a new society in these people, to give them some things to live for, to create, to turn this society to somehow creative society, to give people work, to give them sort of income, to give them some pleasure in life, that they will not all be minded to kill Jews. And it's possible if Israel was able to create a thriving country, a miracle, unbelievable, strong economic entity in the state of Israel, some other maybe lower than Israel will be able to create something not as similar, but at least something that the Palestinians will worth living for.
Now, you mentioned Oslo, and I know part of your career was involved in fighting some of the results of Oslo, particularly, as you mentioned, bringing in the head of the one of the leaders of the PA, who was a terrorist. Oslo involved a relationship with the PLO, which then became the PA, who you're saying is a terrorist organization, no different than Hamas. Maybe the idea is that we need to turn back the Oslo Accords people who lived here before the Oslo Accords, who lived who actually traveled to Gaza to do certain shopping, to buy things. They had relationships with the people that lived there. People went in there without a gun. They went to banks there. They took their cars there to get fixed. I mean, what isn't all this a result of our trying to educate them, to re-educate them, to think that we can actually get them to adopt the Western way of living, to live for, as you mentioned, some enjoyment in life and some financial. I mean, maybe that's our mistake here. Maybe we're thinking that they think the way we think and they don't think the way we think.
True. Oslo was a disaster. Oslo was a terrible mistake. When you were able to go into Jenin and to Kalkilia and buy fruits and cross from one edge of the country to the other one in 5 minutes, today you need like 5 units with tanks, with explosive, with weapon, just to cross from one point to another. The Oslo Accords turned Judea and Samaria to a military zone, which they were not before Oslo, and caused the terrorism to escalate, not only in number, but in equality. Before Oslo, there were terror attacks in Judea and Samaria, but they were terrorists with knives and Molotov cocktails. That was their weapons and stones. Today, they have machine guns. Today, they have missiles and rockets in Judea and Samaria. Today, they dig tunnels. Today, they became an army. And therefore, I wouldn't rule out eliminating the Palestinian Authority or reverse the Oslo Accords. But I don't want to say an answer out of the blue, because this thing has to be sorted out by experts, by military personnel, by people who can examine all implications of reversal of the Oslo Accords, economically, militarily, socially. There is no question in my mind that the Palestinian Authority tend to be a fatal mistake. We knew it from day one. This is why we protested against the Oslo Accords. There was no mistake. There was no question that it was a mistake to bring Yasser Arafat from exile and the PLO that was down on his knees and make them a ruler of a piece of land inside the state of Israel and turn them to international figure. And where there are non-persona grata in the United States and elsewhere, sometimes suddenly to become the leaders of the Palestinian people, something that doesn't exist before. So there were a lot of mistakes done by the Oslo Accord, the same mistakes that were done by the disengagement from Gaza, which we are paying a very high price. And it's time to rethink the whole thing.
Now, when we rethink this, though, and you're saying we have to get the opinion of the experts, of the military experts and, economic experts and all that, aren't all these the experts that failed us in the past?
I didn't say to use the current one. I didn't say the one that are sitting in the TV Israeli channels and criticizing the army while they were in position that brought the army to the place and to the position where it is now. I'm not talking about current politicians. I'm talking about people that had nothing to do with this disaster. By the way, it's very hard to find them because they all, over the years, were involved in such type into leading us to this concept of to leave Hamas as an organization to construct the PLO in Judea and Samaria in order to prevent Palestinian state. They all led us to the concept that you don't need a big army. Now with the technology that the IDF has, you can actually release a lot of units and and get rid of half of your tanks and weapons because now you have very smart, high-tech technology to fight. This is not the type of war you fought 30 years ago. They all were part of this concept that supported the Oslo Accord, supported the disengagement. I know. It will be very, very hard. And yet, maybe there is tzaddik echad besdom.
A righteous person in Sdom, yes. Yeah.
Or 5,
right,
as Abraham wanted, that can really examine it carefully, because there are implications, right? I hear that if you eliminate the Palestinian Authority and bring back the military, how do you call it? Minhal Tzvai, military administration to Judea and Samaria, it will cost billions of dollars to the state of Israel. And I hear from my expert that I use from Arya Spitzen, right? The one that you examined. And he says to me, what is this BS? Who comes with this number? What? When we had the military administration back then, it cost us billions of dollars? No. In the end, the Palestinians know how to manage themselves. You put the head of Jenin responsible for his city. You put the mayor of Nablus responsible for his city. You can run an education system. It doesn't cost so much. And I'm, with my little understanding in how it really works, cannot make this decision. So we have to put people that really understand, really know, can come with real numbers to see if economically it's wise. Same as military. Mm-hmm. Right now, I hear people say, don't let the IDF be so involved with Judea and Samaria because the Palestinians are doing most of the work. The Palestinian Authority is chasing Hamas in Jenin, in Nablus, in Ramallah. They are killing them because they are their enemy. So why you want to eliminate this force and do it yourself? Why won't you want to risk the life of more IDF soldiers in Judea and Samaria? You can hear this argument. On the other hand, you know that the Palestinian Authority chases only Hamas. They don't chase their own people right. that recently have been escalating the terrorism in Jenin, in Nablus, in Ramallah.
Right.
So there are pros and cons, and a decision should be made. I'm not saying now, because Judea and Samaria should be the third front that we have to deal with after the southern front, Gaza, and the northern front with Hezbollah. But Judea and Samaria will be needed to
now,
be.
Aside from all your efforts in the courts and fighting terrorists in the court system and in getting at their money, I know you're also a panelist, a sought-after panelist on Channel 14, very close
right.
to here. What kind of things? How do you see your role on the panel in Channel 14? Are you only talking about legal issues, or are you talking about issues in general?
We're talking about the war. Mm-hmm. I talk about all the aspects of the war, to the best of my knowledge, militarily, but obviously legally and socially, and even spiritually. Look, in the end, we are fighting for our life. This is a war for the existence of the state of Israel. It's not going to end in Gaza. It will continue to the north. And right now, with a failed negotiation of Amos Hochstein trying to bring some deal with a terror organization that doesn't respect any agreement that he signs on, I don't see any way out but a military operation in the north. So the implication of such a conflict can be horrible, and this is why Israel has to be totally united now. Really, one people, one nation, one heart. And we have disputes among us. Before October 7th, the country was on the verge of a civil war, splitting over the judicial reform. And after October 7, everybody unified, everybody fought together. But now you hear again, you hear these voices again, you hear you see the demonstrations again, trying to bite us. And I call and say, this is not the time. This is not the time. The nation of Israel always had a lot of opinions and will always have disputes. It started with the Gemara and continue until today. It's fine. But don't kill each other. Don't fight each other. Right now, our enemy is looking at us and very, very happy to see that there is, again, a split in Israel, a split that encourages them to go and commit the atrocities on October 7 because they thought that Israel in its lowest point. So let's not give them encouragement. Let's not give them a reason to smile. Let's not strengthen them. We have to be strong. We have to fight. And we have to win. And you know what? This is the message I'm sending. Israel will win.
I want to just end on an optimistic mode. And I know this is going to be, your answer is going to be optimistic. So I'm going to ask it anyway. You grew up in Israel. You went to high school here. You went to university in Israel. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
How do you see the change in the youth from when you were growing up to the youth that you see now? When I say youth, I also mean the young men and women that are fighting in Gaza now, that are filling the ranks, that are teaching us, our generation, what Zionism means. How do you see?
It's amazing. It's amazing. You see the young soldiers on the ground. They are heroes. They are pushing. They are looking to fight. They have fire in their eyes and in their heart. In their eyes because they saw what the enemy did to us on October 7th, and they see how the enemy is killing their friends, and they swore to win over them. And in their heart, because they know they are fighting for the land of Israel, they are fighting for Jerusalem, they are fighting for the existence of the people of Israel. And some of it, 100% is due to the mechinot and to the yeshivot and to yeshivot HaEsder, all these that trained the soldiers before the army with the faith in the state of Israel, with the faith of the land of Israel, with the faith in the Torah. And this is the spirit. This is the spirit that leads the battle. Don't look at the commanders. Don't look at the chief of staff that now saying maybe it's time to end the war. Don't look at the IDF spokesman that says you can't destroy Hamas as an idea, and whoever says it lies to the public. Don't look at them. Look at the young commanders. Look at the young soldiers. Look how determined they are to kill the enemy and to save the Jewish state, to save the people in Israel.
I would just add,
my faith is in them.
I would just add to that not only to save the Jewish people in the state of Israel, but to save the entire world. And that's part of what you at Shurat HaDin are doing in terms of your fight even outside of Israel in the universities and against the arm of Hamas throughout the world. So Shurat HaDin, you can look them up on the internet. It's an organization, very worthy organization that deserves our support. Pleasure to have you on, Nitzana. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it very much.
Good luck in all things that you're planning and doing in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.